Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 659. This Beyonder power is very powerful. On the future, Anderson Hood pressed his hands on the shipboard and saw the undead army in the pitch-black sea recede like the tide. They rushed over one another and surged for the stern of the Black Tulip. He saw Gehrman Sparrow press his cap with his right hand while he descended from the sky before landing opposite Admiral Hal Ludwell. Such a scene was illuminated by dark red or gloomy green light. With the accentuation from the wraiths, shadows, and all sorts of strange spirit world creatures, there was an indescribable sense of beauty. Cool! As expected of the craziest adventurer. Anderson praised from the bottom of his heart before recalling something. Gehrman Sparrow had apparently thrown a charm in front of him before flying over. Furthermore, he had specially demonstrated the incantation to activate the charm. His intent is. Anderson Hood moved his gaze down and discovered a charm made of tin at his feet. On the Black Tulip, Klein, whose body was slightly bent while his eyes were locked onto his enemy, wasn't actually as cold and calm as his expression depicted. Anderson better fly over with the charm. There's a high chance that I can't deal with him alone. It might even be very dangerous. While his eyes reflected the silver mask and the two pale white flames, Klein silently prayed. As the mysterious eyes that observed the deck and himself existed, as well as the door opener in the dream world which Anderson Hood had mentioned, he cautiously gave up the idea of immediately praying to himself in order to use the sea god's scepter above the gray fog to respond. He also warned himself not to expose such matters unless he was in dire straits. He believed that creeping hunger and tinder, together with the various Beyonder powers of magician and the charms of the sea god domain, gave him the ability to fight Admiral Hal Ludwell. As for Azek's copper whistle, it could attract undead creatures or spirit world creatures that were inclined to death's domain. It could neutralize the most powerful means of a powerful spirit medium. For a sequence 5 Beyonder of the death pathway, as long as it didn't exceed a certain number, one would often choose to overwhelm their enemy with numbers when facing a certain number of mid-sequence Beyonders. However, Klein didn't believe that he alone could defeat Ludwell in such a situation or even kill him. Firstly, the battlefield would be held on the Black Tulip. Considering how Admiral of Stars could use the future, anyone with a brain knew that such a situation wasn't optimistic. Secondly, Ludwell was the most senior pirate admiral at the moment. He had the two powerful factions, the King of the Five Seas and the Numinous Episcopate, backing him. The mystical items and sealed artifacts he had might not be any weaker than Klein's or might even exceed his. In addition, many rumors indicated that he possessed a ring that was left behind by the ancient Death. Along with the fact that his sequence was lower than Admiral Hell, Klein was not only lacking in the adrenaline of a pending successful hunt, or of performing great acting in the role of a crazy adventurer, but he was also tense and anxious. He didn't dare to be careless. All he wished was that the strongest hunter who was plagued with bad luck would quickly fly over. Only when two people of equivalent strength allied together could they have a small chance of defeating or resisting Ludwell, who had lost his undead army. It also gave Katla and her pirates time and space to finish off the pieced-together monster. Just as this thought flashed across his mind, Klein didn't hesitate to launch an attack. He made the fog of poison which he stole with tinder spread. No one could see the uneasiness and worry in his heart. Wearing an exaggerated triangular hat and silver mask, Ludwell raised his clenched left fist, spread his fingers, and aimed his palm at Klein. Instantly, the deck of the bow was enveloped by a harrowing yellowish-green fog. And in front of Ludwell, an illusory glow exploded. Following that, a point spiraled and collapsed inwardly, outlining a blurry bronze door whose two sides swung open. The bronze door was covered in all sorts of mysterious patterns. It had an indescribable heaviness and silence to it. With a creak, the door shook and cracked open a little. Behind the gap was endless darkness, as though it was the deepest and darkest night. Indescribable pairs of eyes were hidden in the darkness behind the door. They were densely packed and everywhere, but it was impossible to discern their actual bodies. Skinless arms covered in blood, along with greenish-black vines with baby faces reached out. Palms with mouths filled with teeth grabbed at everything beyond the door as they screamed, laughed, sobbed, yelled. This brought a terrifying suction force. Out of nowhere, cold hurricanes that sent chills down the bones stirred, pushing objects towards these strange creatures and the gap in the bronze door. The yellowish-green fog of poison was instantly cleared as Klein couldn't help but lean forward as he stumbled. The glove on his left palm immediately turned pitch black. It had the sinister feel of the night and the grandeur of the cosmos. Klein's brown eyes darkened as he spread out his left arm to the side in a gesture of politeness. The terrifying suction force that swept the bow's deck suddenly changed direction, grabbing the skeletons and rotting zombies that were rushing to the stern, and it threw them into the gap of the door. They were bound by the greenish-black, baby-faced vines and bloody arms and were pulled behind the bronze door where the countless eyes were. Distortion! Baron of Corruption's distortion! Klein had distorted the target of the mysterious door, and he used the skeletons and zombies on the black tulip to substitute himself. Despite that, he was still affected by the remnant forces of the tremendous suction force. He found it difficult to take a step, preventing him from fully making use of his nimble and agile traits. The cap he wore had already been blown up by the hurricane and was spinning in midair. It seemed to take flight as it pursued the undead creatures that had been sucked away. At this moment, Admiral Hal Ludwell, who wore his exaggerated triangular hat, raised his right hand again and extended his palm. The right side of his upper body rapidly turned illusory, as though it belonged to that of a specter or wraith. His arm kept extending and instantly covered quite a significant distance as his pale palm grabbed at his enemy. Whoosh! The noise from the hurricane suddenly vanished as soft sobbing sounds drilled into Klein's ears, causing his body to turn numb, as though his blood had frozen. As the pale palm approached, he seemed to be possessed by a wraith or evil spirit. He couldn't produce an effective response as he watched death approach. In despair, he felt his vitality deplete at an increasing rate. Without any resistance, Ludwell's pale and illusory right palm grabbed Klein and squashed him into a thin paper figurine. The paper figurine was covered with signs of dark green corrosion. Soon, it was shredded to dust under the hurricane that never stopped. To the side of the bronze door, Klein's figure surfaced again. His left glove had already been dyed with the color of pure sunlight. He immediately straightened his body and spread open his arms. Golden flames swirled around a pillar of holy light that descended from the sky, striking the bronze door which was covered in mysterious patterns. Sunlight suddenly burst out, and it was so blinding that it made it almost impossible for Klein to open his eyes. As for the terrifying door which Ludwell had created, it had begun shaking and turning slightly blurry. Even the extraordinary suction force from behind the door had weakened. More than half the greenish-black baby-faced vines and the bloody arms were vaporized. However, even more strange arms and distorted creatures attempted to squeeze out from the opening in the door. Just as Klein was about to continue using the Priest of Light's light of purification to purify the bronze door, Ludwell's pale palm swiped down wildly. Klein hurriedly dodged to the side as he kept rolling to avoid the remnant effects of the hurricane and the soul-sucking palm. 1 roll, 2 rolls, 3 rolls, and his body abruptly bounced up in a diagonal fashion. At some moment in time, creeping hunger had already appeared to be made of gold. Admiral Hell's silver mask was the first thing that was reflected in Klein's eyes. It included the pale flames in his eye sockets. Following that, 2 bolts of lightning brightened from the depths of his eyes. Interrogator's psychic piercing. At this moment, a black, square-shaped ring on Ludwell's left index finger produced a slight glow. Immediately a scene appeared in Klein's mind. It was a gigantic throne that was made up of the rotting heads of creatures like humans, elves, giants, dragons, demonic wolves, sea monsters, and vampires. On each side, there would be miniature transparent faces of wraiths, shadows, and evil spirits. They were filled with hatred, viciousness, and indignation. Suddenly, Klein felt as though his head had been struck by an axe. The fearsome pain filled his mind without any delay. His psychic piercing had not only failed to show its effects, but it had even ended up affecting him in an amplified manner. If not for him having experienced more extreme pain, Klein definitely would have fallen to the ground, wailing and struggling. But even so, he temporarily lost his ability to resist as he bent his back with a grimace. Seizing this opportunity, the gap where Ludwell's mouth was, a slow language that ordinary living creatures were unable to understand was emanated. The surroundings instantly turned dark, blurry, and illusory. This was the language of death that came from hell and the underworld. Just as Klein felt a little better, he discovered that his spirit body was floating up uncontrollably, separating from his body, inch by inch. And the terrifying suction force from the bronze door was an irresistible force to the spirit. No, this won't do! While his spirit body hadn't completely left his body, Klein raised his right arm and spread his hand, which was wearing tinder, with great difficulty. Different lustrous glows instantly interweaved as they surfaced before him, and kept changing and rapidly flickered. Without any hesitation, Klein grabbed onto a pale white blob swirling with a gloomy green color. He twisted his wrist and extracted it. In this battle, the beyonder power he wished to steal the most was the one that created the bronze door, but he couldn't guarantee his success. All he could do was seek the blessings of the goddess. The lustrous glow flew over and landed in tinder. However, this wasn't the beyonder power that Klein wanted the most. However, it wasn't the worst either. The mouth behind Ludwell's silver mask moved, but it wasn't able to produce the sluggish, awkward language that was destined for the living to not understand. At the same time, Klein opened his mouth.